On July 24th, 2024, a 28-year-old mysteriously disappeared after telling several friends he was going to walk 55 miles from Hot Springs to Rapid City. He seemed to have changed his mind, with witnesses seeing him head into town in Hot Springs rather than away from it. However, friends and family haven't seen or heard from him since. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jill Lynn. I would like to thank Janessa for bringing this case to my attention. At the time of this recording, this case is only 2 months old. The family has completely exhausted all of their resources and are desperate to find answers. Today's case involves a recent, active, and ongoing disappearance. This case hasn't gathered a lot of attention, and unfortunately, there are not many details available to the public. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Matthew Marshall Jr.'s story. Matthew is a 28-year-old who was born and raised in South Dakota. His family is from the Rosebud Sioux tribe. It has been shared with me that unfortunately, Matthew had a rough upbringing. His guardians and mentors were impacted by drugs, alcohol, and generational trauma. He was exposed to a life plagued with poverty. He tried to find different ways out of this poverty, but this unfortunately turned him to a life of crime. Since his disappearance, Matthew's criminal history has been highlighted in a negative light. However, I would like to note that Matthew had turned his life around. He had become sober and was no longer committing crime. Those who know Matthew highlight his humor, saying he's extremely funny and he finds a way to make laughter out of the darkest moments. Matthew has a lot of great qualities, but what stands out most is how hard he loves. He fights for the people he loves and he doesn't give up. This is what makes his disappearance so strange. He wouldn't willingly do this to his loved ones. In July of 2024, Matthew traveled across the state, driving more than 5 hours from his home in Sioux Falls to Hot Springs. He intended to go to Hot Springs to spend time with his family. Matthew is Native American and he does amazing beadwork, but he wanted to learn even more about his culture and his history. This is an opportunity that he wasn't provided with when he was a child. Matthew was staying with his father in a trailer owned by his grandma. His grandma lives in an apartment just up the road from the trailer that Matthew is staying in. It has been reported that Matthew and his dad were not getting along, and Matthew had been staying with a neighbor as well, but the validity of this claim is unknown. While in Hot Springs, Matthew was looking for work in an attempt to help his grandma, who had recently lost everything in a house fire in Rosebud. His grandma explained when she would talk to Matthew, it seemed he was becoming very depressed as he was having difficulty finding work. Matthew had mentioned he asked the maintenance guy at his grandma's apartment for potential work, and the maintenance man said they don't hire, quote, his kind. He threatened Matthew about returning to the property, claiming he would have him arrested for trespassing, later doing just that. Matthew was arrested the day before his disappearance, leaving unexplained scratches on his face. It is unclear if there was an altercation beforehand or if the scratches were obtained during his arrest. Matthew has now missed his court date for the trespassing charge, and this is something his family stress he would never voluntarily do. Matthew's family last heard from him on July 23rd. Matthew's last confirmed sighting in Hot Springs was the night of July 24th. Once Matthew's family realized he was missing, they quickly reported his disappearance to the Hot Springs and Rapid City police departments. The last known person to see Matthew is a nephew of one of the neighbors living near the trailer that Matthew was staying in. The neighbor reported that on the day Matthew disappeared, Matthew appeared distraught. He was crying, walking around barefoot, and stating nobody cared for him. Matthew had told a few people he was heading to Rapid City. However, Matthew then took off walking towards Hot Springs, not away from the town. Matthew left his jackets behind in the trailer, but he did bring along with him his shoes, backpack, and bracelet. It is not realistic that Matthew could have walked to Rapid City from Hot Springs. Rapid City is 55 miles away, and that walk would have taken Matthew more than a day to complete. Even if he would have gotten a ride, the drive would have taken him around an hour. July 24th was also an extremely hot day for both Rapid City and Hot Springs, with the temperatures reaching into the triple digits. That would have made the walk extremely difficult, especially if Matthew was in fact barefoot. Matthew's family has also reported that he doesn't know anyone in the Rapid City area, so it doesn't make sense for him to head in that direction. Again, the Rapid City area is a 6-hour drive completely on the other side of the state from where Matthew lived. None of the witnesses provided a clothing description, and police are reporting Matthew's clothing description is unknown. However, there is video footage of Matthew from the day he went missing. In this footage, it appears he was wearing a gray sweatshirt, dark-colored shorts, long dark socks, and dark-colored shoes. But again, we don't know if this was in fact what he was wearing when he disappeared. Hot Springs is a small town in the western part of South Dakota. It has a population of less than 40,000. The Hot Springs Police Department is made up of a team of just 10 individuals. The team includes a chief of police, a captain, 5 police officers, 1 school resource officer, 1 office administrator, and 1 reserve officer. Hot Springs lies in Fall River County, and the Fall River Sheriff Department has 26 total employees, just 6 of which are deputies. So as you can see, this small community does not have a lot of resources to give in Matthew's case. Sadly, Matthew's case hasn't gathered much attention, despite his girlfriend Marissa having worked tirelessly to single-handedly hang missing person flyers and get his story on the news. She has also reached out to a private investigator, but the cost of the retainer fee has brought that option to a standstill. The search for Matthew has been made difficult by several businesses turning Marissa down when she asked to hang Matthew's flyer. It has also been noticed by several individuals that Matthew's flyers have been taken down with the misunderstanding that he had been found. Matthew's grandma has been in touch with their family in Rosebud and Spring Creek in hopes that Matthew headed that direction, but unfortunately, no trace of him has been found in either of these areas. His aunt has tried setting up a search party, but with the minimal resources, this has proved difficult. Matthew's family has been busy looking for him at all of the places he typically hangs out, including hiking his favorite trails. But these efforts are also coming up empty-handed. Matthew's family is understandably upset by the lack of attention his disappearance has gathered. Marissa has religiously reached out to local news stations in Hot Springs, where Matthew went missing, in Rapid City, where he reportedly was heading, and Sioux Falls, the area where he's from. Marissa has shared that due to Matthew's prior criminal history, the local news stations refused to air his missing person story, calling it a conflict of interest. Matthew's family has been persistent in checking for leads. The response given by the Hot Springs Police Department is that they will follow any tips or leads that come in, but there have been none to follow. They have also noted that unfortunately there is a lot of open land in the area where Matthew went missing. Matthew's family is also extremely worried for Matthew and point out several red flags indicating that Matthew's disappearance is in fact suspicious. The biggest red flag is that Matthew left his dog behind. Matthew's dog was found by a local resident in Hot Springs, and a post began floating around Facebook trying to find the owner. Matthew's dog has since been brought to his grandmother's house. But this is concerning to Matthew's family as his love for animals is stronger than his love for anything else. Matthew would have never abandoned his dog. Another concern popped up when Matthew's family attended a wake in Pine Ridge, but there was no sign of Matthew. His family says that Matthew would have been there had he known about the wake. There's no way he would miss this. One of the potential places Matthew could be is either on the Pine Ridge or Rosebud reservation. If he was on one of these reservations, this could pose some difficulty as it is tribal land and they have their own laws and police force. Marissa has been asked what can the public do to help her. She shares the most helpful thing would be supporting the GoFundMe that she created to secure a private investigator. Matthew's family would like to hire this private investigator as they would have more resources that the family doesn't have access to. And as we noted before, there's simply just a lot of land to cover, which a private investigator could help with. Lastly, simply sharing Matthew's missing person flyer goes a long way. Sharing the flyer, whether it would be in person or on social media, would be an immense help to the family. Matthew has several identifying tattoos, including an M on his left leg, an M behind both ears, a lifeline with an infinity symbol on the inside of his left wrist, a candle on his right hip, knowledge with a feather on the inside of his right forearm, death before dishonor under his left elbow, a 6-point star on the right side of his chest, an umbrella on the top of his hand, and a skull on his left thigh. He has brown eyes and black hair. He stands at 5 feet 10 inches, weighing 160 pounds. We have also shared photos of his tattoos and of Matthew himself on social media to help gather some attention on his disappearance. Anyone with information on Matthew's disappearance is asked to contact the Hot Springs Police Department at 605-745-5200. One of the things that sticks out most to me about Matthew's disappearance is the lack of attention that his case has gathered. Last week, I covered the disappearance of Tyler Weathersby, who is another local of Sioux Falls. Tyler's case quickly gathered a lot of attention and has since gone viral. It's hard not to see the drastic difference between Tyler's case and Matthew's, and I can understand why this is absolutely heartbreaking for Matthew's family. Matthew also went missing in a small community, which unfortunately just lacks the resources necessary to conduct the major searches of the area. This truly seems like a case that needs the public's attention in order to be solved. Thank you so much for listening to Without a Trace with your host, Jillian. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Matthew Marshall Jr.'s disappearance. I know this is a newer case and there's not many details, but I truly hope that sharing the details that are available helps this family. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe and follow us on social media. And please do check out our social media as we have posted photos of Matthew and some of his features that would help identify him. Join me next week as I dive into another case.